Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel called the Yu-Gi-Oh! Project, where my aim is to modernize all the decks from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise for the modern format. The topic of today's episode was nicely requested by a dear viewer of the channel, and it is Primo, one of the three pure nobles of Iliester. Primo appears in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and is technically a part of Aporia, as he represents Aporia's teenage years and can fuse himself together with Lester and Jacob, who I will cover in next week's videos, into Aporia. Primo is the most aggressive of all Aporia's incarnations and is also the most sadistic one, to that point that he sometimes loses the track of pure noble's goals to his personal vendettas. But throughout the series, we eventually find out all the hardships that Aporia and consequently Primo have faced in the past, which gives a lot of depth and understanding to Primo's character. Nevertheless, Primo is quite a capable duelist and an astounding strategist together with Lester and Jacob, as they almost managed to destroy Earth's entire timeline with dropping a giant floating city down to Earth. In the 5Ds anime, Primo plays an Emperor Wisel Meklord deck which centers around Meklord Emperor Wisel, a quirky anti-synchro monster with a handy spell negation effect. Emperor Wisel is one weird monster, as it summons itself upon your monster's effect destruction, so it needs a dedicated deck to bring it out consistently, but the general payoff is hardly worth it, except if you happen to be playing against a synchro or spell heavy deck. As it was a 5Ds era when synchros were released and they were the hot new stuff, Emperor Wisel was very broken in the anime, but in the real life it was complete poop and almost without utility in the real metagame. But with the recent release of Meklord support in the legendary duelists, The Rage of Ra, is the deck kinda very playable and consistent, as it barely breaks a sweat to summon Meklord Emperor and offers good protection to it. So Primo's deck is in essence a Meklord Emperor Wisel turbo deck, which then strengthens it with handy union monsters and employs many handy spells, traps and hand traps to deal with opponents' problematic cards. And as always, this deck will also be constructed according to the 6 deck building rules of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Project. And before we get to the deck profile, please like this video, subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments below what do you want to see next. In Primo's modernized deck I'm playing 3 copies of Heavy Mech Support Armor. I know it is a weird choice, but kinda fits the deck as it attaches to the Emperor Wisel and protects it like it was a synchro monster absorbed by Wisel's effect and gives Wisel targeting and destruction prevention. Then 3 copies of Ash Blossom or Dimension Shifter. You can choose it according to the deck your opponent is playing, but I decided for hand traps in this deck instead of normal traps, because our spell and trap card zones get crowded really fast by back row, union monsters and absorb synchro monsters. 1 copy of Oil Man, because why not? And because it allows us to draw some cards after battle, and it is beneficial as our deck tends to run low on resources after a turn or 2. Then 3 copies of Wisel Synchro Absorption, which is very good as it can swap itself with a targeted Meklord Emperor on the field and avoids leaving our field empty, and it also can prevent monster destruction by negation, or it can block attacks. 3 copies of Original Emperor Wisel to beat down our opponent by stealing their synchro monsters and by negating their spell cards. 3 copies of Meklord Infinity Core, the best monster in the deck, because it is a great play starter as it searches Meklord spells and cheats out Meklord Emperors from the deck when it is destroyed by card effect. And 3 copies of Tuntor Gear, again to strengthen our Meklord Emperors and to prevent its destruction, and this card is also very handy for Link 1 plays. And 1 copy of 1/1 to summon Nucleus Infinity Core to start our plays. 3 copies of Double Summon to summon Union monsters to strengthen our Meklord Emperors. 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance for draw power, since we hardly ever use extra deck. 1 reload because Primo plays it in the anime and it is useful to deal with at hands. 2 copies of Meklord Deflection to protect our Meklord Emperors from destruction. 3 copies of the best spell in the deck, Meklord Assembly, as it pairs up extremely well with Infinity Core and allows us to search a monster and consequently summon a Meklord Emperor via Core's effect, and it can also pop opponents monsters face up back row. Then 2 copies of Frontline Base to summon Union monsters from the hand to equip them to our Meklord Emperor. 2 copies of Meklord Fortress, a weird, almost forgotten field spell which synergizes very nicely with Meklord Emperors, as it can search a Meklord Emperor when it is destroyed. Conveniently, Meklord Assembly can trigger this effect and can also protect our Meklords from being targeted by synchro monsters. 2 copies of Mech-Time Blast, probably the best Meklord trap for Meklord Emperor decks, as it is a nice interruption and allows us to summon Meklord Emperor from the hand. And finally, 2 copies of Negate Attack, a trap used by Primo in the anime, which works surprisingly well in this deck, as I found out that Meklord Emperors are susceptible to battle destruction, so it is definitely worth running it. In the side deck there are some cards that Primo used in the anime which are not that great in today's Meklord Emperor deck, but I wanted to include them anyways, and also some hand traps that you can consider playing. In the purely utilitarian extra deck we're playing Nightmare monsters to deal with potentially annoying cards that our opponent could be playing, Linkuribos to prevent opponent's monsters from battling by reducing their attack value, 2 Almirages to protect our monsters from destruction effects, and 2 copies of Relinquished Anima to steal opponent's monsters. Anima and Linkuribo are especially handy in this deck, as Meklords are level 1, so these 2 monsters are extremely easy to summon and use. And that would be it, my friends, so let's see the deck in action.